I was halfway through folding laundry when my phone buzzed. Nothing unusual, just one of those nights where silence had its own weight. The house smelled faintly of detergent and leftover coffee. I had a habit of scrolling through unsent messages, rereading half-written texts I never had the courage to send. That's when I heard the knock. It was soft, almost hesitant. I figured it was a package left late or maybe a neighbor. But when I opened the door, it was her. My friend's aunt, Claire. She was in her mid-40s, bundled in a sweater like she had come straight from some other kind of weather. Her eyes were red, though she wasn't crying anymore. Not in that exact moment. She just stood there, like she wasn't sure if she'd made a mistake by showing up. "Sorry," she said, brushing her sleeve across her face. "I just needed somewhere quiet." I didn't know what else to do except step aside. Inside, the ticking of the wall clock seemed too loud. I moved the pile of folded shirts to the side of the couch, made space for her. She sat carefully, like she was worried she might leave a mark. "You want some tea? Or coffee?" I asked. "Tea," she said, her voice rough. Then, softer, "if it's not trouble." It wasn't. I boiled water, rummaged for the box of chamomile I barely touched. While it steeped, I found myself glancing at her reflection in the dark window above the sink. Shoulders drawn in, fingers tracing invisible patterns on her knee. She looked smaller than I remembered. When I set the mug in front of her, she gave a half-smile. "You always were polite." I laughed quietly, unsure what she meant. "Guess some habits don't leave." For a while, we just sat there. The steam curled from her cup. My phone lit up once on the table, another notification I ignored. She noticed but didn't say anything. Finally, she spoke. "It's strange, isn't it? The way you can feel more at ease in someone else's house than your own." I wasn't sure if she wanted an answer, but I nodded anyway. "Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to breathe when it's not your walls closing in." Her eyes flicked toward me, as if she hadn't expected me to understand. Then she looked away again. I caught myself studying her hands. The way she cradled the mug, thumb pressed against the ceramic like she needed its warmth. I looked away quickly, but too late. She noticed. "You don't talk much, do you?" she said, not unkindly. "Not unless I have something worth saying." That made her smile again, a little truer this time. Minutes passed like that, quiet, stretched, but not empty. The clock ticked, the tea cooled. She didn't explain why she'd come. I didn't ask. Maybe that was why she stayed. When she finally stood, it was close to midnight. She hesitated near the door, pulling her sweater tighter around herself. "Thanks," she said. "For not asking." I only nodded, hands in my pockets, words caught somewhere in my throat. She opened the door, then paused. "You'll be around tomorrow?" "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual, though my pulse betrayed me. She left with that, no explanation. Just the sound of the door clicking shut and her footsteps fading into the night. But 5 minutes later, as I gathered the cold laundry into a basket, my phone buzzed again. A message this time. From her. I couldn't sleep. "Can I come back?" And I just stood there, staring at the screen, folding and unfolding the same shirt in my hands, not sure whether to type back, or wait by the door. I didn't answer her text right away. I must have stared at it for 10 minutes, the words blurring as I folded the same shirt again and again. Finally, I just typed, "Doors open." She arrived without knocking this time. Her hair was damp, like she'd splashed water on her face before walking over. No makeup, no pretense. Just herself, stripped down to something almost fragile. "You sure I'm not interrupting anything?" she asked, stepping into the living room. I shook my head. "Not at all." She sank into the couch like she'd been holding her breath all day. I put the kettle back on, the same way I had before. It felt like a routine, though it had only happened once. This time, she watched me while I moved around the kitchen. "You remind me of my brother when he was younger," she said suddenly. "Always trying to keep busy when things got heavy. Folding towels, scrubbing counters. Like if his hands were full, his head wouldn't be." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just smiled faintly. "Guess I haven't outgrown it." Her voice dropped. "That's not a bad thing. Just familiar." I brought the tea over. Drove my sister crazy. That was the first time she'd said it out loud, my sister. The reminder of the line between us. My friend's aunt. Older, with a whole different life carved out behind her. And yet she was here. At midnight. Sitting across from me in my quiet house. The silence pressed in again. I found myself imagining how this would look to anyone else, to my friend, if he knew. To her family. To neighbors glancing through windows. I tried to shake it off, but the thought rooted itself. She broke the silence by laughing under her breath. "This feels ridiculous, doesn't it? Me sitting here, acting like I'm not too old for this." Her words hung heavy, but her tone was softer than her meaning. Almost like she wanted me to disagree. "You don't seem ridiculous," I said carefully. She raised her eyes to mine. There was something unsteady in the way she held my gaze, like she wasn't sure which of us she was trying to convince. We sat like that for a long while, sipping tea, the clock filling the room with its steady rhythm. At some point, she leaned forward to set her cup on the table, and our hands brushed. Not much, a graze of knuckles. But neither of us pulled back immediately. Her fingers lingered a second too long. Then she laughed, a small, nervous sound, and stood up. "You should get some sleep," she said. I nodded, but she didn't move toward the door right away. Instead, she reached out, tugged gently at the sleeve of my shirt, barely a touch, almost playful. "Thanks," she murmured. "For not making me feel foolish." When she finally left, the room felt different. Not emptier, just heavier. And I sat there, my arms still warm where her fingers had been, replaying that touch until morning. It didn't take long before her visits became a pattern. Not every night. But often enough that I started leaving a second mug on the counter, a small readiness I couldn't explain if anyone asked. That evening, rain tapped lightly against the window. She slipped inside without knocking, her sweater damp at the shoulders. She shook her hair out, gave me a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Busy?" she asked. "Not really." I had a book open on the table, unread. Laundry folded in neat stacks that hadn't moved since yesterday. She glanced at the page, then at me, as if to say she knew. We sat across from each other, steam rising from the cups between us. The silence wasn't as comfortable this time. Something heavier. She tapped her finger against the mug, restless. "You ever think?" She stopped, shook her head. "Never mind." "What?" Her eyes flicked up, then away. "Doesn't matter." I leaned back, waited. The clock filled the space again. She sighed. "You're young. It's complicated." I opened my mouth, then closed it. The truth pressed against the back of my teeth, but I couldn't find the shape of it. So I shrugged, looking at the rain instead of her. When I finally glanced back, she was watching me. Not in a casual way, more like she was trying to memorize me. And then, knock, knock, knock. The sound startled both of us. She straightened, shoulders stiff, eyes darting to the door. It was my friend. Her nephew. "Yo, you home?" His voice carried easily through the wood. Her hand shot out, touching my wrist before I could move. Firm, desperate. "Don't," she whispered. I froze. He knocked again, lighter this time. "Guess not," he muttered, footsteps fading. We didn't breathe until the sound was gone. When I finally looked at her, her hand was still on my wrist. Neither of us moved. She withdrew slowly, almost reluctantly. "See," she said, voice breaking just a little. "This is not simple." I tried to laugh it off, but it came out thin. "Yeah. Guess not." We sat in silence after that, the air tighter, charged. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, rubbing her temples. "I should go," she murmured, though she didn't stand. I didn't stop her. Didn't encourage her either. Just sat there, every nerve humming. Her eyes lifted to mine one last time. And for a moment, just a moment, she leaned in. Not all the way. Just enough that the distance between us disappeared into breath and heartbeat. Then she pulled back, quick, like she'd touched fire. "Good night," she whispered, almost to herself. The door closed behind her. And I was left staring at the rain-streaked window, wondering how close we'd just come to breaking everything open. It was late afternoon when I saw her outside, walking back from the corner store with a paper bag tucked against her side. The light was soft, everything washed in the pale gray of a sky that couldn't decide if it would rain again. She noticed me before I could decide whether to wave. "You heading somewhere?" "Just out." I didn't have a destination. I just needed to move. "Walk with me?" she asked. We fell into step without another word, our shoes brushing through wet leaves on the sidewalk. She held the bag close, shifting it from arm to arm. I thought about offering to carry it, but something about her grip told me not to. For a while, the only sound was traffic in the distance, the hollow echo of our footsteps. Then, she said quietly, "My sister thinks I'm steady. Reliable. The one she doesn't have to worry about." A pause. I don't know why that feels like a lie lately. I glanced at her. Her jaw was set, eyes fixed on the pavement. She wasn't really talking to me, more to the air between us. "You ever feel like you're playing the role people need you to, and it just," she broke off, shook her head. "Forget it." "I know what you mean," I said. She gave a short laugh. "Do you? You've still got time. People forgive your mistakes when you're young." At my age, her voice cracked, just enough that she pressed her lips together, hard. We turned a corner, and she stopped near a low bench under a tree. The street was empty, quiet. She set the bag down at her feet and sat. After a moment, I joined her. Her hands folded in her lap, fingers knotting together. "I shouldn't be here so much. With you." The words landed heavy. I didn't answer right away. My throat was dry. "I don't mind. That's not the point." She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her eyes made me want to look away. But I couldn't. Her voice dropped. "Sometimes I forget who I am when I'm here. Forget what's expected of me." I swallowed hard. "And is that bad?" She smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. "Dangerous." The silence that followed stretched thin, like glass about to crack. My hand rested on the bench, inches from hers. Close enough that I could feel the heat. She noticed. I saw the way her gaze lingered on that small space between us, like it held everything we weren't saying. Finally, she exhaled. "If I do something stupid," she stopped, shook her head. "Promise me you'll forget it." I turned toward her, heart hammering. "I don't think I could." Her lips parted, just slightly. For a breathless moment, the world narrowed to the space between us, her hand twitching toward mine, her shoulders trembling with restraint. And then she pulled back, snatching her hand into her lap, standing quickly. "We should go," she said, voice too steady, like she'd rehearsed it. The bag rustled in her grip as she walked ahead, leaving me frozen on the bench, staring at the spot where her hand almost met mine. The next few days, I didn't see her. Not even in passing. No knock at the door. No faint shuffle of her steps outside my window at night. At first, I told myself she was busy. She had her own life, her own routines. But by the fourth evening, the silence felt different, intentional. I walked by her place once, just to see if her lights were on. They were. Warm, steady. Proof she was there. But I kept moving, hands in my pockets, pretending I was heading somewhere else. The quiet pressed harder the longer it stretched. I noticed the second mug still on my counter, unused. I found myself checking my phone too often, scrolling through messages, opening her name, typing something, deleting it. Finally, one night, I gave in. I typed, "Haven't seen you. Everything okay?" I stared at the words. Then erased them. The next morning, I bumped into her by accident at the store. She was with someone, a boy, maybe 12 or 13. He looked like her. Her son, I realized. She froze when she saw me. Just a second, but long enough for me to feel it. Then she forced a smile. "Hey." "Hey," I echoed. "This is Daniel," she said, hand on the boy's shoulder. He gave a polite nod, distracted by the shelves of snacks. I nodded back, throat tight. "Nice to meet you." She didn't linger. Just a quick goodbye before steering him toward the checkout. No trace of the softness she'd brought to my living room. No lingering touches. No almost confessions. Just polite, brisk distance. By the time I left the store, she was gone. That night, I sat in my living room, the weight of it all pressing down. A kid. A whole part of her life she'd never mentioned. It made sense now, the way she'd pulled back, the guilt in her voice when she said she shouldn't be around so much. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter. That she owed me nothing. That whatever was happening, if anything was fragile, temporary. But I couldn't stop replaying that walk, that moment on the bench when her hand almost reached mine. And now, with the image of her son fresh in my mind, the distance between us felt wider than ever. I picked up my phone again, thumb hovering. Typed, "I get it. I won't bother you." Deleted it. Typed again, "Wish you'd told me." Deleted it. In the end, I just set the phone face down, screen glowing with unsent words. Outside, her window light went out. And in my living room, the second mug stayed untouched, the seat across from me empty, waiting for someone who might not come back. It was almost a week before I saw her again. I'd stopped expecting it, stopped leaving the second mug out, though the habit was harder to break than I wanted to admit. The knock came late, when the house was dark and I was half asleep on the couch. I opened the door to find her standing there, no sweater this time, just a plain t-shirt, her arms wrapped around herself. "Couldn't sleep," she murmured. I stepped aside, and she came in. No bag, no pretense, just her. She moved slowly to the kitchen, sat at the table like it was hers. I made tea without asking. For a while, she stared at the steam rising from her mug. Then she said, "You saw him. At the store." I nodded. She exhaled. "Daniel. My son. He lives with his dad most of the time. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to explain myself. Not here." Her voice caught on the last word. She rubbed her thumb along the mug's rim, not meeting my eyes. "You don't owe me an explanation," I said quietly. "Maybe not. But I felt like I owed you the truth. And the truth is," she hesitated, lips pressing together, then finally looked at me. "The truth is I come here because it feels like I can breathe. And I hate that it's you. That she broke off, shook her head. "You're too young. You're my nephew's friend. It's wrong." The words landed sharp, but underneath them was something else. Not rejection, fear. I swallowed, my hands tightening around my own mug. I know all that. I've been telling myself the same things. And yet here we are, she whispered. The silence stretched. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the clock in the other room. My heart felt like it was in my throat. Finally, I pushed the words out. I don't care about the rules. When you're here, I don't feel alone. That's it. That's all I know. Her eyes closed for a second, like the words hurt and healed at once. When she opened them, there was a sheen of unshed tears. You don't know what this could cost, she said. Maybe not. But neither do you. She laughed softly, bitterly, then covered her face with her hand. I thought she was going to stand, walk out again. Instead, she dropped her hand back to the table. Slowly, almost reluctantly, her fingers edged closer to mine. I didn't move at first. Just let the space between us shrink until the tips of her fingers brushed against my knuckles. Neither of us said anything. There was no declaration, no sudden rush. Just that small connection, fragile and real, carrying more weight than anything else could. Her voice was barely audible. Okay. It was all she said. But it was enough to make the silence feel different. For the first time, it didn't feel empty. Weeks slipped by, not in any dramatic rush, but in the slow rhythm of routines that began to braid together. She didn't knock as much anymore. Sometimes I'd just find her already at the table, reading my newspaper, a mug in her hand. Sometimes I'd wake to the faint clatter of her spoon against the counter, the smell of tea mingling with my black coffee. It wasn't constant. She still had her own life, her son, her work, her family. Some nights my house was empty again, quiet as it used to be. But the difference was, I no longer mistook that quiet for loneliness. I knew she'd return, in her own way, in her own time. We never talked about what it was, not directly. No labels. No confessions. Just the comfort of shared space. The unspoken agreement that this, whatever shape it took, was enough. One evening we walked again, down the same street where the bench waited under the tree. The leaves had turned by then, brittle and gold. She slowed as we passed, her gaze lingering on the wooden slats. You remember? She asked softly. I nodded. She smiled, faint but certain. Feels different now. We didn't sit. We didn't need to. The memory of that near touch had already transformed into something quieter, something steady. Sometimes, when Daniel came by, she didn't linger. She kept her distance, careful. And I understood. I never pressed. Our closeness lived in the spaces between what the world saw and what we knew. One morning, I noticed the clock on the wall, 8:47 a.m., and realized she'd been here since before sunrise. Curled on the couch, blanket draped over her shoulders, half asleep with an empty mug beside her. I thought about all the nights she used to leave before dawn, retreating into herself. And now, she stayed. I made coffee, set the pot to brew. The sound woke her, and she blinked at me, hair tousled, smile small and unguarded. You make it too strong, she murmured. I handed her the cup anyway. You'll get used to it. She took it, fingers brushing mine, and this time there was no hesitation, no pulling back. Just the easy warmth of familiarity. We sat together in the morning light, sipping in silence. No rush. No fear of who might knock. Just the steady comfort of being seen, of being allowed. When she set her cup down, she reached over, tugged at my sleeve the same way she had that first night. A small gesture. Barely anything. But I understood it. And she knew I did.